Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. Happy Wednesday. We are late because of technology. This microphone right in front of me, if it goes out all of a sudden, y'all in the chat, just help me out here. I'm going to do my best to keep an eye on it and make sure that I still see those pretty little green lights going off as I'm talking, which should mean we're in good shape here. But nonetheless, technology certainly trying me on this Wednesday morning. And we appreciate Jerry Morphew for jumping in the chat. Thanks so much for chiming in. Jerry, I'm relying on you this morning. Make sure that the mic is still rolling with us throughout this show. So appreciate all of you guys who are here with us, including Jerry in the chat. And I really hope you guys enjoy this show because we're going to get into a bunch of conversation around the ACC in terms of the hoops that went on Tuesday night. What a night it was in ACC hoops with a pair of top 25 teams going down in road contests as NC State knocked off North Carolina and SMU knocked off Louisville. We'll get into that on All Access AM, and we'll also go ahead and look at the way too early bowl projections that dropped this week from On3's Brett McMurphy. It's never too early to talk about football season around here. And for the ACC, it's an intriguing group of bowl projections. And I've got some issues. I've also got some things that I like about them. We'll do that and more on this edition of All Access AM. Also, some coaching changes still going on across college athletics. And also, we do have transfer portal news on top of that for a particular ACC school that is continuing to bring it in the transfer portal, building out their roster. So we'll get into that on this edition of All Access AM, presented by our friends at OPW Solutions. Wednesday show always brought to you by OPW Solutions. They will make sure that you are taken care of on your snow and ice journey. If you're still dealing with weather across the country that has been rolling through, it seems like for a while, make sure you reach out to them and talk with them about your options. AJ Crow and his entire team continue to do a really nice job of preparing everybody on their socials. So that's always a good option for you as well to make sure that you are prepared. Give them a call, 214-444-2305. They are in North Texas. They are in Oklahoma. They are in Arkansas. And they are expanding beyond that reach as well in 2026. So we're excited to be partnered up with them as they have some exciting things on deck for this year and for all of you that need their services, whether it be that snow and ice control or just commercial landscaping, painting the parking lot, and doing all the things for your business to make sure it is representing you in the way that you want to see it in some of those external facing things when people roll up to your business. So make sure you reach out to OPW Solutions to see what they could bring you on that front. Let's jump into Tuesday night in the ACC. And trust me, we will get to Monday's demolition by Duke over Syracuse. I do want to talk about that, but I also want to talk about the John Shire drama that continues to unfold, even if he doesn't want to talk about it, even if he wants to move forward. We'll get to that on this edition of All Access AM. Please hit that subscribe button for us as we get into what was a wild night of ACC hoops. 4 teams in action last night, or excuse me, 4 matchups in action last night. NC State, though, made waves by getting a win over North Carolina at home. Now, you go and look at this win and you say, okay, rivalry matchup, certainly one that both teams want, but it was an 82-58 win for NC State over a Caleb Wilson and Henry Visar less UNC team. So keep that in mind. Caleb Wilson broke his hand, big loss for the Tar Heels, the future lottery pick. It's still undetermined on when or if he'll even be back this season. Henry Visar also out for that game. And that's, a tough deal. That is something that you certainly can't, overlook when trying to figure out what this game means and how do you really dive into, the I guess, the kudos that should be given out to the Wolfpack for beating UNC without their two studs in the front court and what they do in terms of the Tar Heels and being able to play at a high level in that front court. But look, it was an absolute rear end kicking by NC State, and something that for a top 25 UNC team, you probably don't see coming in a sense, because you do have a lot of pieces like Seth Trimble that can still get you going. But really, it wasn't a just impressive performance overall by UNC. So that is really concerning. Just of course, as they navigate this stretch of play, we've seen some stars get injured this college basketball season. BYU lost one of their stars. It's going to force them to change in a major way. But UNC losing Caleb Wilson, and we'll see on how long for Henry Visar, it's got to impact their predictive metrics and some of those things around the NCAA tournament. Because right now they're 20-6, they're 8-5 in league play. They're certainly sitting on the right side of everything in the NCAA tournament, and they're going to end up making it. But you're still looking at this team a lot differently. And I wonder when, the dust settles from Syracuse, Louisville, Virginia Tech, Clemson, and Duke, which is what they end their regular season with, how the committee views them, how the committee looks at UNC, especially if we find out more and more about where Caleb Wilson stands and if he'll even be returning for this UNC team. So I'm keeping an eye on that, but let's not, take anything away from NC State. They shot 48% from the field. They were 45% from three-point range. UNC just 15%, 5 of 33 from beyond the arc for the Tar Heels. Both teams, middle of the road in terms of free throw percentage. And UNC still was able to out-rebound NC State 40-38. And, still seeing those turnovers, though, for North Carolina pop up 12-4. NC State did such a good job of taking care of the basketball last night. And you saw Kadir Copeland continue to deliver 20 points on 7 of 16 shooting. He got to the line, 6 of 8, had 7 assists, 6 rebounds, 4 steals on the night, and 0 turnovers committed. So a really, really good night for him in this rivalry matchup. Matt Abel came off the bench and delivered 19 for NC State. But you look at the star really that's left at North Carolina in terms of their starters. Seth Trimble held to just 4 points in 27 minutes. He was 1 of 9 from the field. He had a turnover. But other than that, just a really struggling North Carolina team as far as shooting the basketball in this game. And they were ice cold, 32% from the field. Like I said, 15% from three-point range. And I think when you try to dissect this game, this is a quintessential Will Wade type of team performance from the standpoint of you get some of your key contributors to step up, like Copeland. Darion Williams was in double figures. Van Allen Lubin had double figures. Paul McNeil Jr. double figures. So 4 of your 5 starters in double figures, 5 scorers on the night in double figures as a whole. And we see how NC State can be a dangerous team in this league, now sitting at 19-8 overall, 10-4 now in league play. And you're coming down the stretch here with games against Virginia, Notre Dame, Duke, and Stanford. So really, you should at minimum finish 2-2, and you're going to be sitting there in a really nice position, I think, for the ACC tournament as a whole. With where they sit currently, they have a chance to really jump into that top 4 here. I think down the stretch, Miami's still got some tough tests ahead. Obviously, NC State, if Clemson were to lose to them again, that would be certainly, or not lose to them again because they don't play, but if Clemson were to lose again and dip down into that 10-4 type of range, NC State would hold the tiebreaker, having beat them earlier this year. So there's a lot of things working for NC State in this regard as they're trying to get that double bye in the ACC tournament, and being a top 4 seed, they're just on the cusp of it. And for Will Wade's team, this is, like I said, kind of quintessential performance. You get your stars to come out. They put up 82 points. But really where Will Wade has always seen his great teams deliver is by buying in on the defensive end. And we saw that Tuesday night with this game, and just the intensity that NC State brought in this game, and how they certainly weren't going to go quietly in a game that had North Carolina had its backs against the wall right away, without Caleb Wilson and Henry Visar. And I think with the backcourt for North Carolina, it's very concerning, just because it was a game where NC State just talked their talk the entire game, and North Carolina had no answer to it. And I think that's where when you see a veteran backcourt led by Seth Trimble play against a team that was assembled in year one for Will Wade, and they're able to come into this game and just dominate them like that, and be able to deliver their own kind of trash talking as well. It just twists the knife even more in this game. This isn't North Carolina Duke, I get that, but still, this is a game that NC State really showed their mentality. They're us against the world. And from what I've watched from Will Wade's teams over the years, when they have that kind of backs against the wall, talk your talk mentality, that's where we see his best teams really shine. And North Carolina State, I mean, if they're on point and they're bought in, they're going to play that way with Copeland and Darion Williams and guys like that. And they're getting contributions from kind of all over the score sheet in a sense. So a really well-assembled team by Will Wade, and they're right in the mix for a top 4 finish in the ACC, which would be incredible in year one for Will Wade. Another top 25 team went down as Louisville fell at SMU 95-85, a really, really incredible college basketball game. It really felt like a NBA game in a sense, where defense is optional. I don't think that there's anything wrong with me saying that, but SMU gets a much needed bounce back after losing at Syracuse, a 1-point loss, a quad 1 loss on Saturday. Well, guess what? Now they get the fabled quad 1A win, and they get it at home over Louisville, one of the best teams in the country. And SMU just pulled away down the stretch, and similar to NC State in this sense, but SMU's backcourt really was able to talk their talk by showing what they can do. And Jerron Pierre Jr. and Boopy Miller combined for an incredible night. I think 46 points between the two of them. They combined for a triple double. If you're into that type of, building it up piece of tidbits. And, that was exactly what SMU needed after a game at Syracuse that they were just unable to finish. They couldn't get a bucket really in the last 2:43 of that game, and it cost them. They couldn't get a point in the last 2:43 of that game. This time in Moody Coliseum, SMU delivered with that 95-85 win, and this game played out a little bit more like I thought the first matchup at Louisville could for SMU. And instead, SMU's backcourt kind of faded in that massive matchups. They didn't share the ball. They turned it over. I think only 7 assists in that first matchup. Well, in this game, SMU absolutely turned it on, and they were really, really impressive. They had 21 assists on 38 made baskets. That's more of the Andy Enfield offense that he wants to see from his backcourt. And they ended up with just 10 turnovers on the night. Meanwhile, Louisville, despite giving up Michael Brown's 29 points, he had 7 turnovers on his own. Louisville as a whole had 17. SMU's defense really was able to step up just enough down the stretch for SMU to pull away. SMU made 8 of their last 10 field goals, and this one really salted away for them late. And for SMU, they were able to get this much needed win over a quad 1A, whatever we're doing with that there. And I think quads should be a little bit more broken out anyway, but now we're assigning 1A, 1B. SMU does get that major resume boosting win, and it pretty much locks SMU into the NCAA tournament, barring a complete collapse down the stretch for this SMU team. And when you look ahead to what SMU has, now they get to, and I don't want to say it like this, but I'm going to say it like this. SMU gets a little bit of a reset on Saturday. You're still at home. You get to play Boston College, which let's just call it what it is. SMU should be able to handle business against a BC team who we'll get to that sits at 2-11 in league play, 9-17 overall. This kind of feels like when SMU went up to Boston College in football season, everything's going right. People are all excited. I think they had just beaten Miami, and then they're going up to Boston College to play a really, really bad football team. That is what Boston College coming into Moody Coliseum on Saturday is like. Then you go on your West Coast swing. You go at Cal, you go at Stanford, then you come home, you get Miami, and then you go at Florida State. These matchups are going to be really interesting because now, after SMU beat Louisville and put it all together, you can sit here and say, well, they could do it. They could go 5-0 down the stretch. They can enter the ACC tournament on a 6-game winning streak, which would be unbelievable. I still don't know if it happens. I still think that there's the possibility of them splitting out in the West Coast, which is no shame in that. And then Miami is obviously tough. Florida State gave SMU everything it can handle earlier this season. So there's a lot that still plays into SMU's seeding and their kind of down the stretch. But the SMU really started out ACC play with a tougher slate. You know, they played North Carolina, they played Clemson, they played Duke, they played Virginia Tech, they played Virginia. And then they kind of got that little bit of a break with Wake and Florida State. Then they jumped back into a pair of tough games, NC State and Virginia, and they came out on the wrong side of them, or Louisville and NC State, and they came out on the wrong side of them. They're battle tested. So for them to get this win was just massive on all levels for SMU. This is a confidence boosting type of win. You know, I think North Carolina beating them when they were struggling earlier this year was a good win over a blue blood at home. It was okay, SMU's kind of arrived. We'll see how it goes. And then they lose at Clemson, at Duke. But this win, both teams at full strength. Michael Brown playing at an elite level. Ryan Conwell obviously still contributing for Louisville and getting in double digits. But SMU really needed this type of I would say, confidence boosting win to show once again to this team that I think kind of similar to what Will Wade kind of deals with his roster. You need to kind of keep the carrot right there because you have returners like Boopy Miller and BJ Edwards and Samet Yigitolu who play key roles, starters. You know, they're your key faces of this program, but you brought in a Dron Pierre Jr. and a Corey Washington and some of these other pieces, and they're young at various spots on this roster. But what you can show them is, hey, see what happens when we share the basketball, when we're quick with the passes, when we're getting guys moving, when we're getting out and running the floor. I mean, SMU fast break points 11 compared to Louisville's 18, so nothing crazy there. But where SMU had its urgency, had its speed, is the way they moved the basketball. I thought they were stellar in terms of their decision-making and getting the ball out when they needed to. They really didn't have too many turnovers outside of really Samet Yigitolu's 3 on the night. They didn't have anyone that really, really kind of killed them. There were a couple Boopy Miller moments, but overall, when you look at what SMU put together, they played with pace, they played with confidence, and their backcourt really took over. And in a game that, had it 52-49 at the half, and you're thinking, okay, both teams not really leaning into defense, but it really was just an incredible performance by both teams shooting the basketball. 52%, almost 53% for Louisville in the first half, 60% from the field for SMU in the first half. Just awesome stuff. I think when you look back on this game, if you were there in Moody Coliseum, it was just an awesome basketball game. I really don't know how else to state it. I thought it was high level ACC hoops. And for those of you who tuned in, you were in for a treat. And it came down to the final minutes, and then SMU pulled away. And, a very, very critical win for Andy Enfield to get that one. SMU now 4-7 versus quad one opponents, and SMU got 20 points from both Jerron Pierre and Boopie Miller for the third time in 4 games. SMU, with the game tied 76 all with 6:33 to go, outscored Louisville 19-9 the rest of the way, with Miller and Pierre having 14 of those 19 points. So the Stars came to play for SMU in Moody Coliseum Tuesday night, and they get a much, much needed resume boosting win. And for Louisville, they're still squarely in the NCAA tournament. They're 19-7 overall. They're 8-5 in league play. They do get Georgia Tech at home. So they kind of, once again, similar to SMU, kind of a reset, maybe get back on track. Then you get North Carolina, who, very gettable right now. Clemson, Syracuse, Miami, Louisville, another team that could go on a run and finish with 5 straight wins with their remaining games in their regular season if they play it right. So this is not sounding the alarm bell for either one of these basketball teams in terms of Louisville and SMU obviously got the win, but you're sitting here looking ahead on both schedules and you're saying these are two teams that really should, if they play up to their standards and their levels and their potentials, go on a run to finish the regular season and end up being among those top seeds in the ACC tournament. Both of these teams are not going to be top 4 seeds from what it seems like to me, unless something crazy happens. But they're going to be squarely in that 5, 6, 7 conversation, which is important as well for these teams. So SMU, much needed win. They jumped to 33rd in the net with this win, up from 36. So a massive win at home for SMU. And again, to do it by 10, you get that full 10 points. Big for the analytics, big for the net. SMU, Andy Enfield, all the credit in the world for what they did Tuesday night. Let's go back. Actually, let's do this. We're going to talk a little bit more ACC hoops. I do want to remind you guys, though, about, first and foremost, our friends at the La La Land Foundation. And this is a foundation that I think everybody can learn more about and feel good about what they're doing with their lives, and if you choose to get involved with the La La Land Foundation, because they deliver to the youth that are coming up and getting older and ready to go to adulthood. They deliver the type of help that I think everybody in the world can appreciate, and their commitment to kindness and focusing on that as the backbone of everything they do helps guide them to be one of the top foundations you should look at in terms of maybe doing some charity work, whether it be monetary donations, whether it be in kind, whether it be mentorships. You can do all of that with the La La Land Foundation. And in particular, if you work for a major corporation, think about bringing it to them and saying, hey, we can help sponsor the La La Land Foundation, the La La Land Foundation's work. We can get involved. We can volunteer. We can provide guidance to help some of these young adults that are transitioning out of the foster care system into adulthood. We can work with them on skill development and personal growth. And I think that's something that I think we can all get behind, and it's helping, America and the future of this country be better prepared for the world that they're going into. And that's not just from a work perspective, that's a personal life perspective. That's, some of the things that, a lot of people kind of know and understand just coming out of, their teens and their, young adult life into true adulthood. So the La La Land Foundation is an incredible opportunity for anyone who's looking to get into more charity work and mentor and do all these things. You can really make a difference with the La La Land Foundation. So go to lalalandfoundation.com and you can get involved and help make a difference. It's an incredible foundation, and we're proud to partner with them here at All Access AM. Have a swig of coffee there and keep this train rolling. Virginia Tech at Miami. a really, really, really good basketball game on this Tuesday night as well, and a major win for Miami as they improved to 21-5, 10-3 in league play. Virginia Tech now 17-10 and 6-8 in league play. Virginia Tech's bubble, I would say, is very, very close to bursting. They still have some nice metrics. They still have some really, I think, good talking points around why they should be considered a bubble team. I still think now with a loss like this and sitting at 6-8 in league play, you're probably looking at this team and you're thinking, okay, one seed NIT. They actually moved up a couple spots for their close loss to Miami. They lost 67-66. So you move up, you get rewarded in that respect. But they're 3-8 in quad one games. They do have two remaining. They do have Wake Forest, North Carolina, Boston College, and Virginia. So if they're going to make a run, they have a gettable 3-game slate over the next 3 to get it done, and then maybe they can shock Virginia at Virginia, which would be a major, major push for them. But I still think when you look at where they're ranked, they're 56 in the net. Anything above 50 is not going to get you into the tournament for the most part. It's very, very rare. That's not the end all be all. The net's really used for seeding and things like that, but it really is difficult to make the NCAA tournament when you are 56 in the net, and that's where they sit after this game. And for Miami, they got this done with Trey Donaldson having 32 points. He was one of 2 Miami players in double figures. Dante Allen had 10. You had Malik Renault was held to 9. He was 3 of 6 from the field. I think Miami's big thing here. They only had 10 turnovers. This was a really just good defensive battle for the most part, from what I've seen. Kind of doing some research ahead of the show. I didn't get a chance to watch this one, but when Virginia Tech came into Miami, this was kind of a do or die game of sorts for them. I thought this was a big opportunity for them to go on the road, get a quad one win over a clear cut tournament team, and they couldn't get it done. So it's really unfortunate for Virginia Tech to not get this one done, but that is what happens sometimes, and you get a boost of sorts from losing a game like this. So it's kind of fascinating to watch all that play out and things like that. But nevertheless, the Virginia Tech Hokies, their NCAA tournament hopes are certainly on thin ice here as we get closer and closer to Selection Sunday. I think for Miami, they continue to show why they're one of the feel-good stories of college basketball this year. Jay Lucas and what he's been able to do. They continue to sit squarely in the NCAA tournament, getting a much-needed win, and they're sitting in a top 4 seed as well right now. They now go on the road to play Virginia on Saturday in a 1 p.m. matchup on ESPN2. We'll preview some of this tomorrow, I'm sure, on the show. Then they go at Florida State. They host Boston College. Then they go at SMU. And then they finish with Louisville at home. Those final 2 games, in particular, I would say, for Miami, huge for seeding, huge for finishing strong and kind of being able to push this thing across the finish line for a top 4 seed in Jay Lucas's first year. It would be incredible work by him and what they've been aiming to accomplish as a whole. So kudos to Miami. Again, didn't get a chance to watch that game, so don't necessarily want to spend too much time on it. But Miami just keeps doing what Miami has done. A lot of doubt about where they were going to go in this stretch of ACC play, that middle chunk that got significantly harder for them. And they have answered the bell. And so you've got to give them credit. And they're going to be a tournament team. I mean, barring a collapse, that's where they're headed. So just they keep the train rolling. Win's a win. Florida State did beat Boston College. Florida State now 13-13 overall, 6-7 in league play. So 6-7. For those of you who know what that is, please fill me in the comments. I still don't know. And Florida State is a one of those teams that right now is I would say I don't want to say like bid crusher teams, but a team that is very, very dangerous, and their stretch is Clemson, Miami, Georgia Tech, Pitt, and then SMU. So 3 of those 5 teams, Florida State can really impact here down the stretch as far as maybe seeding or hurting their NCAA tournament chances in some cases. But they are playing some really good basketball. Robert McCray V had 27 as Florida State was able to rally and come away with this one at home, as they really did not need to kind of kill all of their goodwill by losing to Boston College, but they were down in the second half and they rallied, and they've now won 5 of their last 6 games. And look, again, Florida State is a dangerous team. They've got athletes, they're buying into the system, and they're kind of giving you. I would say, I mean, I got to think they're kind of playing their way maybe into the NIT. I mean, 13-13 overall, not great. They also played, I felt like, a tough non-conference, so maybe I'm out of line saying that, but I got to think that they're sitting there in their schedule, and you're seeing them go off in ACC play of sorts, and they're now up to 82 in the net. You know, they were down in mid-January around 134. So they've made a move. I don't know. I don't think that necessarily maybe gets them into the NIT, but I don't know. Maybe that does. We'll see. They're playing really, really good basketball. They could be scary in Charlotte. If they get one win, maybe they can build on that and get another. We'll just see how it goes. Go back to Monday night. Duke beat Syracuse 101-64 as the Blue Devils just crushed Syracuse here. 61 points in the second half. Just crazy. Cam Boozer, 22 and 12 on the night. And all of the goodwill from Syracuse on Saturday when they beat SMU, and a fun atmosphere, I'm sure, for everybody up north. Lost there as they're now 15 and 12 overall, 6 and 8 in the ACC. Duke 24 and 2, 13 and 1 in league play, and sitting atop the league. Isaiah Evans had 21 points. You had five Blue Devils in double figures, and Syracuse leading scorer William Kyle III with, just 12 points, but a dominating effort by Duke in this one as they were able to move past Syracuse. And I do want to go back to this, and we're going to go back to UNC Duke and the upset led by the Tar Heels and the aftermath of the court storming. John Shire said that somebody on his staff was punched and that they were trampled and this and that. And look, this is where these rivalries and all these things, they just get good. So Jeff Neiman, the district attorney for Orange County, who that realm includes Chapel Hill, North Carolina, disputed John Shire's account of what happened in the post game. And he said that, quote, he should have more discretion, exercise more discretion in public comments around this. And really was just saying, look, I deal with accusations and, false claims and all of those things in my line of work. So John Shire should really exercise more discretion, which I would agree with, because we're sitting here weeks past from the court storming, and we've not seen a video of a Duke staffer getting punched. I've not seen anybody get trampled. I saw a water bottle toss. And I'm sorry to go back to this. I'm not going to spend much time on it, but John Shire was asked. I'll talk about it as well, because John Shire came out with a word salad of, let's not talk about that, but be careful what you wish for. I've got more. Here's the quote. I would like to focus on Syracuse, but I'll tell you that I know what I saw and I know what happened with our staff after the game. And that's the bottom line. I'm not going to circle back or get into, I don't know what was said or what or wasn't said or what people want to claim, but I know what happened. And I'm always going to support our staff in those situations. And again, I could have even said more, but I'm not going to do that. It just, when people do this and they start dancing around all sorts of different words to say, be careful what you wish for, basically, I've got more, I've got the evidence, then guess what? Show it. If you follow Duke basketball on Twitter and you follow them on Instagram and you see their socials, they got cameras everywhere. And ESPN's got cameras everywhere. If somebody was punched in the face, we would have seen it by now. Somebody would have been videoing this epic court storming that I still think is a little like meh on the Carolina side for, a UNC Duke game. But somebody would have seen this. Somebody would have turned over footage. Somebody would have handled this. And don't threaten that I could have said more unless you actually are ready to say more. That's my opinion. Jon Scheyer, very, very good coach. I know he was asked. He's responding. So he's not bringing it up. He's not hammering it in terms of continuing to harp on it. But let's be real here. Let's call it what it is. Nobody got punched. Wednesday night's ACC action, and then we'll go on to the early bowl projections for the ACC. Clemson at Wake Forest, 6 p.m. ACC Network. Virginia at Georgia Tech, 8 p.m. on the ACC Network. A calm night, I would expect, in league play as both Clemson and Virginia go on the road to face teams that really they should take care of. We'll see how we're feeling come Thursday morning on the show, 8 to 9 a.m. Central Time, All Access AM, and see if we are right on point with that, or if we're sitting here saying, wow, more chaos, Clemson or Virginia, or both fell in league play, as the ACC continues to show just how much of a grind it is this season and how much improved it is. 8 bids probably right now in the NCAA tournament, and just continuing to show how deep it is and how difficult it is game in, game out to perform at a high level. But we should see some relative calm. I'm ready for a little USA hockey this afternoon, 2 p.m. Central, facing off against the Swedes. So let's keep it kind of light. Hopefully, everybody's celebrating a USA win later today. But for the basketball side of things in the ACC, let's keep the status quo on the top teams in the league winning for the most part and continuing to deliver more NCAA tournament teams. So we don't need Clemson or Virginia get knocked down a peg tonight. So we'll be watching those closely. Again, ACC Network action for those games. Not too much else to talk about on the ACC side of things. And one other tidbit here as we continue to break down ACC basketball. The Duke Blue Devils just kind of blew past some of their ratings, their offensive ratings, 7th, defensive rating number 2 in terms of efficiency, but they really jumped up a spot this past week with their performance over Syracuse. So they're continuing to show why they're going to be a number 1 seed, barring a meltdown. And so the Blue Devils are doing their part. So I do want to shout them out for that, as even though I've got opinions on Jon Scheyer and what he should be saying or shouldn't be saying in his comments. College football, as we continue to watch it unfold with coaching changes, is continuing to see coaches move across the country. Thomas Hammock is leaving Northern Illinois for a position with the Seahawks. So he's heading over to the Super Bowl champions. I say this because who knows how all of this impacts the ACC. Washington also parted ways with offensive coordinator Jimmy Doherty. And so that is a position open. Oklahoma hired Delane McCullough as its new running backs coach. Keep an eye on the coaching carousel as we continue to see, moves being made and continuing to see staffs fill out and coaches be hired. So that's just a gentle reminder as Arkansas quarterback coach Clint Trickett gets hired as the offensive coordinator at Maryland this week as well. Things are still moving. Things are still shaking in the world of coaching changes. Things are still changing, moving and shaking, I should say, in the transfer portal. NC State wasn't done in the transfer portal. They landed a commitment from Jalen Hampton. There we go. Jalen Hampton, he signed on Monday afternoon, shortly after we got done with the show. He is a UT Martin offensive tackle transfer that comes to NC State after taking an official visit. this semester. He has 1 year of eligibility remaining, and he was a former junior college player who ended up at Charlotte. 6'9", 335-pounder, was a full-time starter last year for UT Martin. He now goes to NC State after starting at left tackle, shoring up that offensive line for CJ Bailey, and a really, really good move here for NC State to add some depth late in the transfer portal cycle, I guess. I mean, there's only so many players left that aren't already in their schools for this season. So I don't know if he's going to be actually, I take that back. The Wolfpacker are on 3 NC State site is covering this, and he is going to I believe he'll get there this spring. I'm trying to find it in their story, but if he does, he'll be able to. So he's working on the arrival date. So he's trying to get over there mid-semester in time to start working out with the team, get in there for spring ball. But nonetheless, you add a starting offensive lineman from an FBS program. That's a good deal for NC State to get that help for CJ Bailey. They added Daniel Cruz from the transfer portal as well, who's probably going to start at guard for them. And this is one of those deals where you got to continue to mine the portal as late as you possibly can. And so kudos to NC State for continuing to add to their roster and getting him on board. They also added Coastal Carolina quarterback Tad Hudson, and he is a quarterback with 2 years of eligibility remaining, 6'3", 225, threw for 1,253 yards and 6 touchdowns and 7 picks last season in 7 starts over 11 games. He now comes in to back up, CJ Bailey, and this makes a lot of sense just as far as building out your depth. And this is where it's to be able to add players with experience. And sometimes the portal doesn't work out right. Like, Tad Hudson probably went in figuring, okay, I'm going to be able to find a spot to start or find a place that has an easier path to starting. Well, he can come in behind CJ Bailey now and just sit, learn, and then maybe he takes over next year. Maybe he's just the backup. Maybe this makes a ton of sense as far as where he wants to go and be at the Power 4 level in the ACC. And, he's had moments where he's impressed. He had a big game in Louisiana Tech against Louisiana Tech in the Independence Bowl in terms of yardage, 311 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, 2 picks in that game. But he also had 174 yards against South Carolina in his Week 13 start this year. So he's shown some flashes, but nonetheless, you had a backup quarterback here for NC State late in the game as well to kind of win that department, of course, and kind of building out your depth with CJ Bailey and kind of protecting him with a quarterback who's played against Power 4 competition. He's played in some of those major matchups that you are going to face as an NC State team this season. So appreciate Oski for the comment. Love all the content and coverage. We appreciate that. Thanks so much for all of you guys who subscribe to All Access AM. Please hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel, or you can scan the QR code in the upper corner of your screen right now. Before we get to way too early bowl projections from Brett McMurphy, we'll close out the show with that. Charlie Woods has signed with an NIL agency to represent him. He'll be repped by Players Group Management and agent Alan Hobbs. Charlie Woods committed to Florida State golf earlier this week or last week, and is going to be playing golf for the Seminoles. He's the son of Tiger Woods, and that 2027 recruiting class for FSU, really, really elite. Charlie Woods, of course, is going to be able to capitalize on some NIL opportunities. So he's now signed with Players Group Management, PGM. So a quick recruiting note here as we continue to kind of keep an eye on recruiting news and nuggets here and there. Peter Bork, 4-star quarterback, top 100 prospect, did decommit from Michigan. For those of you watching on our YouTube channel, you can see his Rivals profile. I just popped up there. Top 100 quarterback in the country, top 100 prospect, top 10 quarterback, 6'4", 195 out of Tabor Academy in Massachusetts. he does have Virginia Tech as one of his top options there. James Franklin and that staff are recruiting him really heavily back when they were at Penn State. Penn State's also an option, but keep an eye on that. That is one that in the recruiting world would go a long way for Virginia Tech as far as building out that quarterback room for the long-term future. Way too early bowl projections. I love this stuff. I think it's great fodder. I don't also get caught up in it, and I don't give it much credence because, as we'll discuss with some of these, there are maybe some flaws in some of these projections if we're going to use the basis off last season and kind of what we maybe know about some of these teams as they're being built out for the 2026 season. Brett McMurphy of On3 dropped his way too early college football playoff and bowl projections. For the long and short of it, the college football playoff would include a first round group of UTSA at number 5, Texas, Utah as the 9 seed at number 8, Oregon, number 11, Oklahoma at number 6, Texas Tech, number 10, Texas A&M at number 7, Indiana. And then the top 4 seeds would be number 1, Notre Dame, number 2, Georgia, number 3, Ohio State, and number 4, Miami. So let's pause right there as we look at this. Jerry, I think you are subscribed. So thank you so much for checking. If you would like to, you can search All Access AM on Google, and you can search All Access AM YouTube, and you go to it. And if you see a subscribe button and it says subscribe, just click it. If it says subscribed, you're good to go. Miami sitting there as the 4 seed overall. One, great overall positioning for the ACC. That means your top brand right now, your team that is off of a college football playoff appearance and national championship game appearance is back in as a 4 seed. They've had the season that they want to have. And they've had maybe their lone loss being to Notre Dame is what I'm guessing from this projection, because they do play each other in early November in South Bend. So that would tell me that Miami moved through its schedule with confidence, with ease, made it into the top 4 as a 4 seed, with Notre Dame being the top team in the country. I don't know if all that's going to happen. We'll kind of see. I've got some questions about Miami on the offensive line. Obviously, Darian Mensah, very, very elite. The skill positions are going to be elite. I want to see how some of the Ruben Bain, Akeem Mesidor answers are dealt out after spring ball, and kind of see what the buzz is around there, what the buzz is around Damon Wilson. But I like Miami being in as a 4 seed as a whole. I think they are talented enough to do that. I think they're talented enough to execute their schedule at that level. I do think that game in South Bend is going to be fascinating. It's going to be just such a massive, massive game as a whole in college football. I believe it's the first week of November. I could be wrong. And we'll see both of those teams probably in the college football playoff this time around. I think Notre Dame's got a lot of talent coming back. They've got a returning quarterback who won't be getting his feet wet this time in some of these games. And Notre Dame's schedule is far more manageable as a whole than what it was last year in terms of the early season. The rest of the schedule, pretty, easy. Let's be real. Let's call a spade, and their schedule this year is still easy. It is also easier as far as when their big games are. Notre Dame, if Notre Dame's not undefeated going into the college football playoff, I would have them squarely circled as fraud alert there, but their schedule just doesn't allow for many tests. They've got BYU, SMU, Miami. So those are their basically 3 big games that can test Notre Dame. Let's move past the top 4, because I do think that's for a way too early group. I mean, is anyone going to argue with that? Probably not. All of those teams have quarterbacks that are among the nation's best, whether it be in terms of efficiency or experience, and have led their teams to lots of wins. Miami will just be breaking in a new starting quarterback out of that top 4. I don't have a problem with Miami being number 4. I think that's pretty spot on, bang on. It might even be a touch high, depending on how some of the trenches work out for Miami this year. But nonetheless, Miami's schedule is manageable, I would say, enough that they should be a top 4 seed in the college football playoff. We go to the rest of the bowl projections, and the Gasparilla Bowl has Virginia versus USF. I see Virginia as a bowl team. I have questions about how they're going to replicate what they did last year. I don't see them winning 11 games. I probably don't see them winning 9 games, if I'm being honest, but I see them being squarely in a bowl game and representing the ACC in the Gasparilla Bowl. I could totally see that happening. I could see them in one of those types of games like the Boca Raton Bowl, where Louisville was last year. We could see them in some of those matchups and being, the pick for the ACC in some of those right before Christmas type of games that we see. I don't think it's insane to say that losing Chandler Morris and losing some of the pieces that they did, that they're going to take a step back this year. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes over there as Bo Pribula looks to take over as quarterback for Virginia. He's got to stay healthy too. It's another key piece. And Chandler Morris missed a game this year too, or most of a game as they lost to Wake. That was really important in the end. You continue to scroll down his way too early bowl projections, and Brett does this. I mean, he is the bowl guy. I mean, he breaks all the bowls. Military Bowl, Georgia Tech versus Navy. Another one that I'm not going to have a gripe about. I still think Brent Key has built a program that I am almost more likely to bet on doing a little bit more than maybe the expectations currently are for them, with losing Haynes King and some of these guys. They bring in Justice Haynes. They bring in Alberto Mendoza to compete for the starting quarterback job. They got a lot of changes, a lot of questions around Georgia Tech. Brent Key has built a really strong culture. I don't necessarily think culture can really push you over the top and put you into elite air year in, year out, because you've got to have the players. But I think the floor is really where your culture sets that. Like, Georgia Tech should be a very comfortable bowl team. I want to hear more, and we'll have Chad Bishop or Kelly Quinlan on who cover the Yellow Jackets to talk more about them. But I could completely see them maybe outperforming some expectations. I've seen them like around the 10 mark in ACC teams, and I think that's fairly low. I think that's a lot of credit being given to a Haynes King, but still, I have questions with just how low Georgia Tech is going to be this year. NC State versus Tulane in the Fenway Bowl. Zero issues. NC State has repeatedly proven that they are going to be in the middle of the pack of the ACC, and I could completely see them in the Fenway Bowl. I don't think they did enough to surround CJ Bailey with elite players, and pretty much all their effort, it seemed like, went into retaining him. And they added some offensive linemen late. I don't know what the skill positions are going to look like there. They added some guys from Miami and some South Florida players, but I'm worried about NC State. This could be a bottom falling out, but the Fenway Bowl has got to fill somebody from the ACC, and I could see NC State making a bowl game again. Because why? They showed this year when their backs were against the wall, they ended up figuring out a way to do it. So why not? The Pop-Tarts Bowl in Orlando, a favorite of everybody's. Florida State versus Cincinnati. First of all, what a fun little matchup here of Mike Norvell, former Memphis coach, who faces a team that he used to face in the American. I think this is giving Florida State a lot of credit, and you've seen me give Ashton Daniels a lot of benefit of the doubt. I think this is a little high for bowl projections, and I don't know where else they would slot. Like, would they slot in the Fenway Bowl, or would they go somewhere else? But I don't necessarily have too many other places to put them, and so I guess I like it. But I think Ashton Daniels in this Florida State offense is going to raise their game a little bit as far as consistency goes. I think they're going to be a more safer bunch to watch week in, week out. I don't think they're going to be, as high as they were against Alabama and then as low as they were in other moments. But I really think this Florida State offense with Mike Norvell calling the plays, I I think it's a good thing. I do. So, Matt, appreciate it chiming in. Yeah, exactly. Would mean FSU wins 8 to 9 games, which is something. That's another jump. That's another jump for them. I'm. You guys haven't been able to tell. I've been kind of in the camp that Ashton Daniels can certainly outperform expectations. They've gone after some of the big name guys. Now they get Ashton Daniels, and maybe this is a situation where it finally hits. So Gator Bowl, Tennessee versus SMU in Jacksonville. This would be a ton of fun. I think this is a great matchup for SMU. This is the game that Virginia was in this year against Mississippi State. Or yeah, I think Virginia was in against Mississippi State. I think I have my bowl games right there. And SMU would put them like right around the ACC championship or in it. But if you're not going to the college football playoff, a Gator Bowl, those type of matchups would be really, really nice for a team to get, and then you get a big time opponent in an SEC foe. So another major opportunity for SMU if that's how it plays out. I think their schedule, if they beat FSU and Louisville, is super manageable for them to be back in Charlotte. And if Miami goes to the college football playoff, Duke went to the Sun Bowl last year and kind of moved and shaked everything and shook everything by winning the ACC. And that plays a part, but Virginia went to the Gator Bowl. So how does that, end up shaking out? Gator Bowl for SMU would be really, really good. I think that means they've won 10 games. That's, just going into that, so we'll see how that goes. But I like that projection for SMU if they're not, of course, in the college football playoff. They have major college football playoff aspirations going into that one. So as we continue on, I'm just about ready to wrap this up here, but you do have another kind of big bet here, the Sun Bowl, Virginia Tech versus UCLA. This would, again, kind of mean that Virginia Tech was right up at the top of the ACC. I think that is too big of a jump in year one. I think long-term, James Franklin is going to be one of the top coaches in the ACC. I think he is one of the top coaches in the country as far as consistency. But I just don't think that Virginia Tech offense is going to be there for them enough to get them to a 9-10 win regular season that probably puts them in this position, that puts them in the upper echelon where they're battling away for an ACC championship berth. They play at Maryland, and like we've talked about on this show, they have a chance to start out 5-0, and they'll be going for 6-0 going into that road trip at Cal. And you don't think Cal wants to beat Virginia Tech? They'll be right in the mix for a lot of really potential ACC championship opportunities as well. Then you get Georgia Tech, they're a tough team to play. You get at Clemson, at SMU, then you play Stanford at home, then you go at Miami, then you play Virginia. Their close is really, really difficult. So I could see Virginia Tech maybe getting to 8 games right now. I'm not ready to pick them and say they're going to be basically the top of the ACC that doesn't make the college football playoff. That's kind of what the Sun Bowl says to me. You get to the rest of the slate for the ACC, and the Duke's Mayo Bowl would be in Charlotte. Alabama versus Louisville. What a fun matchup that would be. This is, again, kind of Lincoln Kienholz hitting. This is all of the elite talent that Louisville has added hitting. I still think if you're looking for like my top 3 teams in the ACC going into this year, and you can kind of group them Miami and then SMU and Louisville. SMU and Louisville are that's the group as far as rosters. Lincoln Kienholz has to hit, and will he hit early enough to have beaten SMU? Obviously at home, so they've got a good advantage in that respect. Will he be ready to face Ole Miss in Nashville in week 1? Those are questions I have. But they've certainly built a roster that is very, very good. And so, no one's sleeping on Jeff Brom and company. But let's, just as far as pure bowl games and bids and things like that, you're looking at a team that would certainly be in that 9-win range once again. I don't want to say this is the year, but it feels like with Isaac Brown back and some of these different players that they have returning and adding, man, this is that punch through the ceiling type of year for Jeff Brom. And look, don't sleep on, a first year starting quarterback either. We've seen it. We've seen Ty Simpson at Alabama and what that can do. We've seen Trinidad Chambliss go to Ole Miss and take them. We've seen some of these different first year quarterbacks go on a run, and maybe it's Lincoln Kienholz's time. Maybe he's the Mason Heinchel this year, albeit a little bit older of the ACC this year, where he breaks out and becomes a household name. Finally, Holiday Bowl in San Diego, man, this would be a blast. I would love to go out there for this one because Holiday Bowl is just such a great time in San Diego. But Clemson versus USC, this would be a really, really fun matchup, and would mean that Clemson would have returned to prominence in the ACC. And don't forget, Clemson, despite losing to Penn State in the opt-out Fenway Bowl, they, I believe, finished with 5 straight wins in the regular season, including one over South Carolina. So don't sleep on the Clemson Tigers, but they certainly, had enough change this offseason to also sit back there and say, is Chad Morris really going to be able to do this and do this at a high level with their new quarterback, whoever that is, whether it be Christopher Vizina, Chris Denson, or whoever. But that I have questions about Clemson. There's no doubt about that. And is their offensive line really good enough to take the next step? Because they also lose a couple pieces too. And will they have a run game? Because they really didn't have one this year. Lots of questions around Clemson. That's a good long-term bet, I guess. But we'll see. I just got done saying first-year starting quarterback Lincoln Kienholz can make some noise. I don't know if first-year starting quarterback Christopher Vizina is going to have some of the tools around him to make that statement. I think Louisville's offense is far better than what Clemson has going into this year. So with that, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this edition of All Access AM. We thank you guys for the interaction in the chat. That was a great, great time. Again, we are now live Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 to 9 a.m. Central, 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern time. Tomorrow, Alexis Cubitt, covering Louisville, will join us. We'll talk about some of their transfer portal haul. We'll talk about the basketball team a little bit too. And we'll get into some bracketology, I'm sure, as we preview another weekend of ACC basketball. We really appreciate you guys joining us. Please make sure you guys are subscribed to the channel. Thank you guys to our those of you who support our sponsors, OPW Solutions and La La Land Foundation. I hope you guys have a great Wednesday. Enjoy watching some USA Olympic hockey. Hopefully a dub coming for the U.S. team this afternoon. But for all of you guys, we'll see you guys Thursday morning, 8 to 9 a.m. Central on